Amelia Preacher. The name hit me like a physical blow. My last one. My masterpiece. A symphony of fear composed over 72 perfect, meticulous hours. And now they were going to make me live it from the other side. The world dissolved and reformed. The feeling was not of movement, but of substitution. One moment I was on the floor, the next I was on the table. My table. Cold steel against my back. Thick leather straps were already buckled around my wrists, ankles, and chest. I didn't feel them being fastened, they were simply there. I pulled against them, a futile gesture that my mind perceived as a week-long struggle, my muscles burning, my tendons screaming as they stretched millimeter by agonizing millimeter. I was completely, utterly immobilized, powerless. The air in my lungs turned to ice. I was 7 years old again in the shed, but this time the darkness was a bare, flickering light bulb, and the monster wasn't imagined. The monster was my own memory. The voice returned, now a sterile narrator in my personal hell. Subtext: Amelia Preacher. Cause of distress: psychological terror induced by prolonged anticipation of physical trauma. Initial instrument: 1 standard number 11 scalpel. I saw it then, on the tool bench 10 feet away. The scalpel. It lifted into the air, held by nothing I could see, and began to move towards me. It traveled at a speed that was objectively normal, but to my dilated perception, it was the slowest, most terrifying thing I had ever witnessed. It was a silver comet crawling across a universe of stained concrete. What feels like a day passed as it cleared the edge of the bench. My thoughts were screaming whirlwind inside a statue of flesh. I tried to reason with the machine. I tried to find a logical paradox to overload its programming. I tried to shut my eyes, but my eyelids wouldn't obey. They were locked open, forced to watch. The scalpel crossed the first crack in the floor, a journey that, to my perception, took a subjective week. I watched the light glint off its impossibly sharp edge. I knew that edge. I had honed it myself. I knew exactly how it felt as it traced the line across skin. I knew the precise pressure needed to separate flesh, and my body, my traitorous body, remembered it too. Every nerve ending was on fire with the memory of the pain I had inflicted, now recontextualized as a prologue to my own. I decided to scream. It would be my last act of control, my final defiance. I would shatter this simulation with the sheer force of my will. I focused all my being on that one simple act. The thought formed: scream. The signal traveled from my brain. I felt it move down my spinal cord, an electrical impulse crawling through molasses. Over what felt like a month, my larynx began to tense. I focused on the muscles in my jaw, commanding them to open. They obeyed, but with the reluctance of continents shifting. My lips began to part. The process took a subjective season. I could feel the air in the room, thick and tasting of rust, begin to creep over my teeth as my mouth slowly widened. I drew a breath. The air filled my lungs with the speed of a rising tide, an act that spanned a subjective year. The scalpel was now halfway across the room. It had been traveling for what felt like my entire lifetime. I had the air. My mouth was open. My throat was ready. I pushed. The sound began not as a scream, but as a vibration, a low hum deep in my chest that took a century to build. It was the birth of a sound witnessed from the inside, frame by agonizing frame. The first tremor of a vocal cord. The first puff of air vibrating against it. The slow, deliberate crescendo of a noise that I knew would not fully erupt for another subjective decade. And all the while, the scalpel, my own beautiful, perfect tool, continued its patient, inexorable journey towards my chest. The first touch wouldn't be for another 100 years of my own perception, and I would be awake and watching for every single second of it.
In the physical world, it is the year 2066. The Correctional Cognition Center is a marvel of sterile efficiency. It is a quiet place, filled with the soft hum of life support systems and the gentle clicking of technicians monitoring data streams. There are no cells, no bars, no screams. There are only the pods, sleek, white, anonymous capsules arranged in neat rows in a vast, climate-controlled chamber. Inside each one, a body lies inert, kept alive by an intricate system of nutrient drips and neural interfaces. Justice, here, is not a spectacle. It is a silent, internal, and perfectly calibrated process. In front of a bank of monitors sits a junior technician named Kenji. He is 2 hours into a 12-hour shift. He sips his lukewarm nutrient slush and scans the rows of biometric data scrolling down his screen. To him, the occupants of the pods are not people. They are designations. Subject 432, Subject 433, Subject 434. His job is not to judge or to pity, but to ensure the system runs smoothly. At 1642, a small flag appears next to the data stream for Subject 434. Kenji leans in. It's a minor anomaly. A 0.02% spike in neural activity in the amygdala and prefrontal cortex, accompanied by a fractional increase in heart rate. It lasts for exactly 1.7 seconds before returning to baseline. It is a flicker, a meaningless blip in a torrent of data, likely caused by a momentary feedback loop in the simulation's sensory inputs. He logs it with practiced indifference. S434, minor synaptic flare, all vitals stable, system nominal. He takes another sip of his slush and moves on to the next alert. He does not know, and will never know, that the 1.7-second blip he just dismissed was, for the mind of Sven, the man inside the pod, the beginning. It was the first thunderclap of a subjective, years-long scream. It was the dawning of a new form of consciousness, one defined solely by powerless anticipation. Sven, the artist of control, the man who built his entire identity on being the one who holds the key, is now, and forever, the one in the shed. The difference is that this shed is his own mind. The lock is the law of time itself, and the darkness is not empty. It is filled with a perfect, eternal reflection of his own work. His sentence is not for life. It is for every life he took, lived out second by excruciating second from the other side of the knife. And outside, in the quiet, sterile room, the machines hum on, and no one hears the scream at all.
My shop smells like fresh-cut stems and damp earth, and I wouldn't have it any other way. It's the smell of life, you know? Most people think of flowers as pretty decorations, but to me, they're tiny, defiant soldiers of joy. Every morning, I get to unlock my door and walk into this little explosion of color. Fiery tulips, moody purple irises, carnations that look like tiny pink sunsets. It's my sanctuary, the place where I build my armor, one bouquet at a time. My husband Tom calls me his eternal optimist, and he's not wrong. But it's not a personality trait I was born with. It's one I've earned, one I've built from the ground up, petal by petal. Every happy customer, every perfectly arranged centerpiece, every time my daughter, Rose, comes in after school and buries her face in a bunch of sunflowers, it's another brick in the beautiful, fragrant wall I've built around our life. A wall to keep the bad things out. And for 25 years, it worked. The bad thing had a face once. A pale, sweaty face that I saw for only a second in a flashlight's beam, his breath fogging up my bedroom window. I was 16. My room was my whole world. Posters on the wall, books piled high, a little bubble of privacy where a girl is supposed to feel safe. He took that from me. He stood out there in the dark, night after night, just watching. The police report called him a peeping Tom. It sounds almost silly, like some old-timey cartoon character. But there's nothing silly about the feeling of a stranger's eyes on you when you think you're alone. It's a special kind of poison, one that seeps under your skin and stays there. It turns every shadow in the corner of your eye into a threat, every creak of a floorboard into an approaching footstep. After that, I became obsessed with locks, with deadbolts, with the specific, satisfying click of a window latch seating properly. I promised myself two things. I would never feel that powerless again, and I would build a life so bright and full of love that no darkness could ever find a crack to get in. My home, the one Tom and I poured our savings into, with its big garden and sturdy fence, was meant to be the heart of that promise, my inviolable sanctuary, a place where every window was latched and every shadow was just a shadow. That's why, when I came home last night, the little clay bird Rose made me in 3rd grade, being on the left side of the kitchen windowsill, made my blood run cold. It wasn't a big deal. Tom could have moved it, Rose could have, except I knew they hadn't, because I'm the one who closes and locks that window every single night before bed. And I always put the little bird on the right. It's a silly little ritual, another one of my bricks in the wall, a silent confirmation that all is secure. Someone had been inside my house, or maybe, somehow, they were still in here with me. And they wanted me to know they were watching. I didn't tell Tom about the bird. How could I? Honey, I think someone broke in and moved Rose's art project 3 inches to the left. He would have thought I was losing my mind. And honestly, a part of me thought he'd be right. I spent the next day at the shop, arranging peonies and trying to force the rational part of my brain to take over. It was the wind, a tremor from a passing truck. Rose must have bumped it yesterday and forgot. I went through 100 perfectly logical explanations and believed none of them. The feeling of being watched had returned, a cold weight at the base of my skull that hadn't been there since I was a teenager. It followed me home from the shop, and it sat with me at the dinner table while I laughed at Tom's stupid jokes and asked Rose about her math test. I was performing, a perfect imitation of the happy, carefree woman I had been just a day before. The first time I saw her, it was just a trick of the light. I was washing dishes, looking out the window above the sink into our darkening backyard. For a split second, in the reflection on the glass, I saw a woman standing behind me in the dining room doorway. She was tall and thin, and the image was so fleeting I couldn't make out any details. I spun around, my heart hammering against my ribs, a dishcloth dripping soapy water onto the floor. There was nothing there, just the empty archway and the warm golden light of the living room beyond it. "Just tired," I whispered to myself, my voice shaky. But I couldn't shake the afterimage, the distinct impression of a long, sorrowful face and a high, dark collar. A week later, the performance was starting to crack. Little things were happening, tiny incursions into my fortress of order. A book on the coffee table I knew I had left closed would be open to a random page. The back door, which I obsessively locked and checked, would be ajar by a single, unnerving inch. Tom and Rose swore they hadn't touched anything. I was living in a state of quiet, humming anxiety, jumping at every creak of the floorboards. My old rituals of locking and checking multiplying into a frantic, obsessive ballet. The real scare came on a Tuesday night. Tom and Rose were asleep, and I was curled up on the sofa, pretending to read, but really just listening to the sounds of the house. The television was off, its screen a black, reflective mirror. I glanced up and my breath caught in my throat. She was there. Reflected in the screen, standing in the same dining room doorway. This time she wasn't a fleeting glimpse. She was still, unnaturally still, like a photograph. She wore a simple, high-collared gray dress that seemed to be from another time, and her long, dark hair was pulled back severely. Her face was the most terrifying part. It was a mask of profound, bottomless sadness. Her eyes, even in the faint reflection, seemed to be fixed on me, not with malice, but with a deep, aching envy that felt more violating than any threat. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I was 16 again, pinned by an intruder's gaze. I squeezed my eyes shut, and when I opened them, the reflection was empty. That did it. I wasn't just tired anymore. I was terrified. But fear quickly gave way to the one feeling I would not allow in my home: powerlessness. The next few days, I became a detective in my own house. I checked every window and door, not just once, but 5, 10 times a day. I even dug out the old blueprints to see if there were any hidden entrances, any priests' holes, or forgotten passages I didn't know about. I spent hours online digging into the history of our property, looking for some clue, some rational explanation. I found her. On a grainy black and white photo on the county's historical society website. Fati, a woman who had lived and died alone in this very house almost 80 years ago. No family, no children. The caption said she was a recluse, a forgotten soul. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that it was her. The point of no return came on a bright, sunny Saturday afternoon. I was looking out the kitchen window, watching Rose play in the garden I'd spent years cultivating, my sanctuary within a sanctuary.
And there, standing by the old oak tree at the edge of the yard, was Fati. She wasn't her reflection this time. She was there, solid-looking in the afternoon light, yet slightly out of focus, like a heat haze. She was just standing there, her sorrowful eyes fixed on my daughter, on my beautiful, happy life. Something inside me snapped. The years of carefully constructed optimism, the walls I had built brick by fragrant brick, they all come crumbling down. This was my garden. This was my daughter. This was my life. Rage, hot and pure, burned away the fear. I wasn't a victim. Not anymore. I threw open the back door and ran out onto the lawn, my voice raw as I screamed at the silent, sorrowful figure. Get away from my family!
Thank you so much for watching or listening. Like and subscribe for more nightmares. Your support keeps the darkness from consuming this channel, so we can face the next terrifying story together. Don't be left in the dark.